Welcome again to the Hebrew Point of View. We've got a couple of things that we're going to deal with today, but firstly, there's some very exciting news that we have to tell you, and that is Stuart is almost completed with a new book series. And what is it called?
It is called The Star of Babylon.
Yeah.
And it deals with the events leading up to the Israelites being released from Babylonian captivity. Mm-hmm. But it also deals with the prophecies by Isaiah that were made 200 years before the events actually took place, and how they were fulfilled by Cyrus the Great of Persia and by God when he took when the finger wrote on the wall mm-hmm. of the banqueting hall.
Yeah.
What was going to happen to Belshazzar.
Yeah.
It's an exciting book. It takes you right into what was happening in Babylon at that point in time, and it's a historical novel, so it's not just a study book.
Right.
There's a story to it.
Right. And that's actually what makes it very different to his other book, Created in His Image, which is a study book. As I have read this book numerous times, it is extremely gripping, I must say, and very interesting, as I'm interested in historical events.
Well, for anyone that's interested in our Christian history,
yeah,
this is a must, because the Jews were taken into captivity for 70 years, which changed the whole
Everything.
Perspective of what they believed, and that perspective forms the roots of our Christianity. Mm-hmm. So we need to know,
basically the foundation of our
we
Christianity.
need to know what happened in Babylon.
Yeah, but I find it extremely interesting because it's history. It's there.
It is. It's very interesting.
But what is more exciting to me is that he's put it in a novel form, so it's gripping. But also, me as a person, I don't go and research history. I just am not wired that way.
And
but when it's and he loves it. But when it's in this format, you don't even know really that you are reading history.
No.
But it's very much there.
Yeah, just read the story, and the history comes on its own.
Yeah.
By the time you get through the book, you'll know the history that it's describing.
Okay, give us the name again.
It is Star of Babylon.
Star of Babylon.
So the star that shone over Babylon, which the Bible calls Hillel ben Shachar, or bright shining star of the morning. We've all heard that.
I've always called it the morning star.
Or the morning star.
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Anyway, now today we're going to be talking about love.
Oh, just before you do that, we are going to continue with the series that we started in Africa before our batteries ran flat and we couldn't find our charger. So we were 3 months in Africa without a charger. But we are going to carry on with Created in His Image. We're going to carry on with the discussions we've been having there.
Yeah.
And
just as a matter of fact, on those lines, I have added a downloadable copy of Created in His Image that you can download at getoutbooks.com. We are probably have about 5 copies of the book available at the moment. So if you want to go there and check that out, that'd also be great.
Right, and I'll put that on the bottom of your screen, getoutbooks.com.
All right, enough of that.
Yep.
And now let's get down to what we're talking about today.
So we're going to take a little excursion today because I want to talk about loving God. Mm-hmm. The essence of our belief system is loving God, loving Jehovah.
Yeah. And a lot of times that is really not how people perceive God, is it?
Well, we misunderstand what it is to love God. So we think that making sacrifices is loving God, or
doing things for God.
Doing things, or self-abasement. You know, like Simeon the stylite who sat on the top of the tower for 34 years in Aleppo, making this huge sacrifice, thinking that this is loving God.
Yeah.
Even our acts of tzedakah, the acts of charity that we do, we interpret that as loving God.
Or maybe giving back to God.
And it all comes from the scriptures that we, I don't want to say misinterpret, but we don't really understand them correctly. We have obviously John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him shall not perish, but shall have everlasting life. This love spelled out that God has for us.
And also not only spelled out, but was done in reality. God gave his Son.
Yeah. And then of course Deuteronomy 6:4, and you shall love Jehovah your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. Again, scripture telling us what we ought to do. We ought to love God. But if we don't really know how to love God, we may be doing a lot of things that seem like we are loving God, but actually are not. We have scriptures like the scripture that Paul writes in Ephesians to husbands. It says, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for it. So we interpret Christ saying, giving himself up for the church is him loving the church. But that's not what the scripture actually says. The scripture says, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. That's one element. And because of that love, he gave himself up for it. So giving himself up was not the love. The love was there first, and that generated the action. John 14, verse 15. When Jesus is teaching, he says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. And God says the same thing in the Torah. He says the same thing. Showing love to all who love me and keep my commandments. And so we think that keeping the commandments is loving God.
It's an act, though. It's an act out of love.
So let me ask you just an intelligent question. If I don't keep the commandments, am I not loving God?
No.
Does my love for God stop because I didn't keep the commandments?
No.
Because
the two are separate, right?
We know that we don't keep all the commandments every day. We all sin.
Yeah.
We all fall short. So do we come in and out of love with God because of our actions? No. We love God, and God says, so you love me now. Because you love me, keep my commandments. Keeping the commandments is because of something that already exists.
Yeah.
It's like I wrote this program here on Microsoft Word. So if I look at this and I print it out and I show you a printed copy, is that Microsoft Word?
No.
No. It's a result of having the program already installed in my computer.
Yeah.
And I know that it's a way out
no, that's quite
illustration.
That's quite describable.
But we have to have God's love already installed in us.
And you do it because of that love.
And our love
and
for
out
God
of that love. Yeah.
already installed.
Yeah, that makes, that's just
so the greatest scripture for any Jew, and should be for any believer, should be Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 4. V'ahavavta et Yehovah Elohecha v'cha levavecha u'cha nefshecha u'cha me'orecha. And you shall love Yehovah your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, nefesh, and with all of your strength or your might, me'od. And we got to know what it means. What does it mean to love God with all of my heart? So I went to my Hebrew lexicon and I looked it up. And for those of you who want to look this up, it is Strong's number, Old Testament, 3820. And it talks about this love, this word that is used in Deuteronomy, Va'avavta et Yehovah, you shall love Yehovah. The Hebrew word hav is a word that's not particularly involved with works. So, do you remember we used to have that teaching where it says, okay, there's different kinds of love from the Greek.
Yeah, agape
and the
philia.
yeah, so yeah, agape, phileo, storge. There was another one, and we always said, well, agape, that's God's kind of love,
Yeah.
and that's giving yourself up. But there was another one called storge in Greek, and storge, the best way to describe that is the feeling you have for your old pair of slippers. That comfort, that
You don't want to get rid of.
that not a relationship, but that, you know, you're attached to those old slippers because they fit you nicely, they're comfortable, you've had them for years. It's just that nice, warm, cozy feeling of having. And that's what God's love is.
Yeah.
It's having that warm, cozy, wonderful, secure feeling that God is there and He is who He says He is. He's Jehovah. He's everything I need at any given point in time.
I think people don't understand this love. I think a lot of the time when people talk about being a Christian, they have the name, they have maybe an experience, but I think they're missing this love relationship. And I call it a love relationship because that's how I see it. Because that to me is the difference between your relationship with God or just having a God. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And some people have that love relationship with God. They just don't know what it is.
I don't know. I find that hard. I find that hard to understand because my relationship with God is it's there.
You know Him.
It's
you
part
trust
of
Him,
who I am.
You don't question Him.
Yeah.
It's an axiomatic fact that God is God, and
But-
every day you wake up, you don't have to renew your relationship with God. He's there.
But you know, in the Amplified, in Deuteronomy 6:4, it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, the only Lord." That's verse 4. 5 says, "And you shall love the Lord your God with all your mind and heart and with your entire being." And with all your might. And that's how I feel that love. It is with my entire being.
Okay,
It's
so
everything that I am.
And that's a great segue into what the Hebrew meaning of heart really is. It is, and this is from, again, that Strong's Hebrew lexicon, says, it is used very widely, broadly, for feelings. But it's used for the will, even the intellect. Now, we used to think that the intellect was soul.
It's a mind.
But it says it's used even for the intellect. Likewise, for the center of anything. So when Hebrews talking about the heart, and we even do that, let's get to the heart of the subject.
Yeah.
We use the word heart in that sense. The center.
Or the meat of it, whatever it is.
But the center of everything. And translated into our belief system, it's the center of your very being. Just like you were saying.
It's who you are.
The most intimate place.
Yeah.
The most intense place where our feelings and emotions are generated. That's the heart. And that's what God says. That's how you are to love God.
Yeah.
With the most intense place, the most personal, the most intimate place within you from which everything is generated.
Yeah. And, you know, we talk like this and people may think, but you're talking about loving a God that you don't even see. You know, you don't. I don't know if people actually reason like that, but you can reason that way. You can say, but you're believing in something you can't see. And yet...
Well, I don't know if it's can't see. I think it's you can't relate to the concept of God because He's so much bigger than we could even imagine.
Think about history, the biblical history. Why did they want a idol?
They wanted to play, or they wanted to see something.
That's right. They wanted
Just
to see, touch, and know that they had. That's why they turned to God.
So all of the nations around them had something they could say, this is our God.
Right,
this is where he lives, and they have a temple for him.
And God reprimanded them for that. Because he says you cannot have any idols or things like that. If you love me for who I am and for what I am.
And what was your mother's favorite scripture? And God says to the Israelites, he replies to them, he says, you can make yourself a temple, make a tabernacle if you want to. But then he says, but I am going to make my dwelling place
in
you, in the most intimate,
so
in
that's
the most
the difference,
personal.
right? That's the difference between my God and a pagan God and an idol. How can you have that relationship? That thing is dead. It cannot have any living part of you.
No, but God
and make its dwelling place in you.
But God lives in that our most intimate place in us. And we relate to him from that most intimate
But you know what
place.
I love about that scripture more than anything else is that ever since I was a child, I was taught that God lives in your heart. You must ask him to live in your heart.
Right.
I never could understand that.
Even the evangelicals will say, invite Jesus into your heart.
Yes, but I accepted it, but I could never understand it until you read that, and this was years ago, is that you can do all this, but I want to make my dwelling place in you, and that's what became alive.
Let's talk about the soul. Your Strong's reference number there is Old Testament 53:15, 5315, and the soul is referred to as nephesh.
Is that the Greek or the Hebrew?
That's Hebrew.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're only dealing with Hebrew, right?
The Old Testament is Hebrew, so if you want to look up Old Testament words, you have to go to the Hebrew, Hebrew lexicon. And the word for soul is nephesh, and nephesh properly or means a breathing creature. So when we look at the creation of man, we see God creates all the animals and all the things and all the grass of the fields and the trees and the fruit. So in Genesis, where God creates man, it says, and God breathed into his nostrils nishbat chayim, the breath of the spirit of life, and man became
a living
being, which is basically what this word soul means, nephesh, a breathing creature, an animal with vitality, a person with vitality. It's used in a figurative sense as well as bodily or human attributes, and also as mental attributes. But mostly it means, nephesh means everything that you are, the breathing, living creature that you are. So that's what soul is, nephesh. Might, which we said before, is me'ot.
And has that got what's the Hebrew meaning of that might?
Me'ot means just great, whole, holy, speedily.
Is strength a good interpretation of that might?
With all your strength.
Well, it is strength and might. Okay.
Everything with all your me'ot, your strength.
With everything you are, really, hey?
Yeah, it's if you want to say something is not just good, it's very good. You use the word me'ot.
Okay.
So the emphasis on its size or greatness or impact is me'ot. So everything that is in you that creates that excess or the greatness or your strength or your great intellect, whatever it is that's great within you should be directed towards God, and that's how we love him. We love him with that. So basically we're loving God with everything that we are.
So how far are you, how far are you going into Deuteronomy 6?
Now, I don't want to go any further than that.
Okay.
Other than to say that.
Okay.
Other than to say that God says you ought to love me, And you need to generate that love from within your heart, your soul, and your strength. But that love produces something within us. That love works its way out of us. So when you love God, it works its way out. So 3 things abide, Paul says: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. If you speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but you have not love, you are no more than a clanging gong and a crashing cymbal.
Empty, empty.
So what is it saying? It's saying you've got the love and it produces something. We don't start with the something and presume that that is love.
Yeah, that's good. Yes.
So God is saying, you need to love me, you need to have this love in you, I am in you.
And that generates
And that
whatever.
generates
action.
action.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It generates action.
Yeah. But we've been interpreting, and not everybody, I mean, I'm not generalizing here,
Well,
but
we're talking about ourselves more than anything.
but we interpret love as the things that we do. So I'm doing this, so therefore I love you. Or, God, you saw the sacrifice I made. I got up at 6 in the morning and prayed for an hour, therefore I love you. No. You get up and pray at 6 in the morning because of the love that already exists within you.
Yeah.
So basically, what God is saying is you need to generate a love relationship with me. That's what it is. And folks, we need to learn how to love God. How, you know, you should wake up in the morning. You shouldn't have to call on Him, pursue Him. He should be there.
Available like you and I are.
Yeah.
Available to each other.
You know, you get out of bed and you slip into your slippers. Your comfortable slippers. That's the relationship that we ought to develop with God. We know He's there. We are confident in Him. He's proved Himself over and over again. His love goes beyond anything we can understand. His mercy is everlasting and all-encompassing.
And if you want to get a real description of that love, read 1 Corinthians 13.
Yeah, the whole chapter.
I mean, we could read it here, but we don't have the time now. But read it. It is so. It abbreviates everything for you and leaves you with no doubt.
So I've got so much more that I could say about this, but I think the message is quite clear. We ought to generate love. We need to love God, but loving God is not the same as the works. The works come from loving God. The loving God produces tzedakah,
it produces
acts of
the works.
righteousness.
Yes.
Yeah. So we do these things because we love Him.
Yeah. And you know, just to say that, I mean, a lot of the evangelical organizations or Christian or whatever, they are doing good works because of their faith, because of what they do and who they believe in.
So faith is knowing with absolute confidence that God is doing something.
Yeah.
It's knowing something with absolute confidence. It's not an unseen thing. It's an experience that you are confident in.
Yeah.
You know, hope is that
confident expectation.
Confident expectation of something good.
Yeah.
It's that confidence in God that we have because we know Him, because we love Him, and because we know that He loves us.
And really, you know that you know that you know. That's it.
Yeah. But knowing that we love Him, but also knowing, most important, knowing that He loves us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And He loves us with a love that we cannot
understand.
Yeah.
Never.
Maimonides says God is not love. And you say, well, why not? Because God is so far beyond what we can understand as being love. He's so much greater than love that we can't limit Him to that word.
You can't describe it. No.
And it's that love that God has for us. And it's that love that we respond to in love.
Absolutely.
With our heart, with our nefesh, our soul, and with our might. Everything that we are and can create and can express. So, thank you for sharing our study with us today, and I hope you got blessed by it. Don't forget to like the program. There's a little thumbs up you can give us, and you can share this, and you can subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet done so. Thank you so much for watching. Shalom. God bless.
Shalom.